Hello and welcome to the third lesson on Greenfoot. We are working with Java to create our game. In the previous videos, we used some if statements and some variables to get this snake to move around. And this was the code we wrote for it. We just did some if statements, and if the if statement true, we called some methods to get our snake to move around. We learned a little bit about what methods are and a little bit about what a variable was. Notice that I've added some code to this to the editor here. This is actually just called a comment. It is represented in gray, and also it's got these two backslashes over it. That's how you start a comment. And the computer is going to skip over this code. It's not going to be reading it. This is just for the programmer to sort of keep things organized and to remember what each thing is trying to do. All right. So now we're going to introduce the ball into this game, and the ball is going to be jumping around our world. And if it's going to touch the snake, then it's going to kill him and give us game over. Let's start by creating a new actor. I'm going to right-click on the actor and create a new subclass. You can pick one of these objects. You can also upload your own. We've seen the screen before. I'm going to give it a name, call it ball. Okay, and then we can right-click, create a new ball, and just put this over here in our world. Then we're going to save the world to save that over there. And obviously, if we hit run, this ball isn't going to do anything because we haven't given it any code. So let's write up some stuff for it. I'm going to open the editor. All right, so what do we want this ball to do? We want it to move around our world, and not through pressing keys or anything, to just move through some sort of logic around our world. Okay, so let's start by writing out our first method. And we're going to call it move, and we're going to symbolize that that is a method with the brackets, and then the method, whatever's in the curly brackets, is the actual method. Let's just go over on how to declare a method. The first word is either public or private, and I'll go into a lot more detail about that a bit later. Let's just leave that public for now, and just as an intuitive idea, if it's public, then I can access it from different areas. Void is the return value, and I will also go into more detail on that in future videos. Right now, we don't want this method to return anything. So this can be integers, this can be booleans, like we've seen. Right now, it's just not going to be returning anything. And then we have named it move and symbolized that it is a method with our brackets. Okay, and what do we want this method to do? So we want to set the location of the ball. And we're going to put in here the current location of the ball, so the getX and the getY. And we've seen this used in a previous video. But we don't want it to be the current location. We want to add some sort of change to that. So let's add some sort of X change. And we're going to add some sort of Y change. And I'm using variables for this. I'm not writing a specific number, because as we've seen before, we're going to want to change these variables throughout the game. Perhaps we want to have some sort of power-up that lets the ball move slower, or maybe different levels are going to have the ball moving faster. So we want to have these stored as variables so that we can change them throughout the game. Now, obviously, if we're going to compile this, this is not going to compile, and that's because we've written the variables here, but we've never actually declared them. We've never actually told the computer what they are. So it's just saying that it cannot recognize this variable Y change and also the X change. And I'm actually going to declare them as an input to the method. So when I call the method move, I'm not just going to call it with the blank brackets like we saw in the prepare method. I'm going to call it like the add object method with some sort of variables into it. So let's see how we can declare a method with variables in it. So when you leave the brackets blank, then you're just going to call the method with no input to it. And if I add some variables over here, then every time I call this method, I'm going to have to give it 2 integers in order for this method to run. And I've declared these variables inside the method. Let's compile that. Now we see that it works. And let's just go over again what we're doing. We have declared a method that we call it move. This method requires 2 inputs. So you have to call it with 2 numbers. One will be the change in the x. The other is the change in the y. And then what it's going to do is it's going to set the location of the ball with its current x plus the change and the current y plus the change. Okay. Now let's call this move method in our act method. So remember, the act method is running several times per second, and the move method isn't going to run unless I call it somewhere in the act method. So let's just see. I'm going to call this over here. And remember that if I just call it like that, it is not going to compile. As you can see that it's not going to compile since we have not put in any input. We need 2 numbers to get this method to compile. Let's just start by doing 1 and 1. Now it is compiling, and let's see how this is going to affect our game. And you can see that our ball is indeed moving. So let's just have a look at that one more time to make sure we understand it. We have declared a method. We've named it move. The method requires 2 integers or 2 numbers to be put into it. One will be the change in the x. The other is the change in the y. Then we are setting the location of the ball with the current x plus the change in the x, which we are inputting into the method, and the current y plus the change in the y, which we are also inputting into this method. And then when we call the method through the act, which is running several times per second, we are giving it a value of 1 and 1. And this is just adding 1 to the x value and 1 to the y value. And that's how we saw that the ball was constantly moving. Okay, so I hope that clears up a bit on how these methods work. Now, I actually don't want to have a 1, 1 constantly being put into here. I want to have some variables for this ball that I'm going to call the x speed and the y speed. So let's just think about that. This again is obviously not going to compile because I haven't yet declared what the x speed and y speed are. But I just want this logic to kind of sit in. I want to move my ball with some sort of speed that I'm adding to the x and some sort of speed that I'm adding to the y. So let's just declare some variables for this ball here at the top. Int is of type integer. I'm going to give it the x speed, and let's just start it by equaling to 1. And we're also going to give it the y speed and just start it by equaling to 1 as well. And then I also want to have a component over here that's going to be my gravity and have that equal to 1 as well. And this gravity is just going to constantly be affecting my y speed. It's going to constantly be pulling down the ball towards the floor. And let's just add the gravity to the y speed. So I'm going to take the y speed, have it equal to my y speed plus gravity. So this is very intuitive. The gravity is constantly going to be pulling my y speed down and making the y speed higher and higher, and that's going to give me a bigger change in the move method and making it fall faster. Now there's actually a shortcut to write this since we are typing the word y speed twice, and you can just type it out like this: plus equals gravity. And these 2 lines of code are exactly the same. This is just a shortcut for this. So I can go ahead and delete that. And let's just see how this affects the game. Just run that. And you can see that the ball is indeed falling. It seems pretty smooth. Looks like it's moving pretty realistically and falling towards the ground. And let's just see a few things. Maybe I want to change my gravity to maybe 10. So let's see what that's going to look like. What do you think is going to happen? You can see that it's got a heavier feeling with ball to it, as if it's something much stronger is pulling it down, and that makes sense since we increased our gravity. All right, so in this video, we introduced our ball into the game. We've added some physics to this ball to let it fall towards the ground. We saw how changing the gravity made this fall quicker. And we also have written out our first method and saw how we can input some variables into this method. Be sure to leave us your thoughts and questions in the comments below, and stay tuned for future videos. And thanks for watching.